My name is Lawan. I'm 73 years old. And I want to begin tonight with something that took me most of my life to understand. Something that seems so fundamental that it is almost embarrassing to say it took so long. The reason most of us fail to love ourselves is not that we lack the information about how to do it. We have been told how to do it 1,000 times. We know about self-care and self-compassion and positive self-talk and all the practices that are supposed to produce self-love if we apply them with sufficient consistency. The reason we fail is not information, it is sequence. We have the sequence backwards. We believe that self-love is the destination, that it is something we arrive at after we have done enough work, practiced enough practices, improved enough aspects of ourselves. We believe we will love ourselves when we are finally the version of ourselves that is lovable. But that is not how it works. That is not how it has ever worked for anyone. Because the version of yourself that you believe would finally be lovable is a moving target. It retreats every time you approach it. You achieve one thing and the bar shifts. You fix one flaw and discover another. You reach the place you thought would be enough and find yourself still not feeling it. Because self-love is not a destination, it is the ground. It is not what you arrive at after the work, it is what makes the work possible. And it is not built by improving yourself, it is uncovered by seeing yourself. Clearly, honestly, without the story about what needs to change before you deserve to be seen with kindness. I spent 40 years trying to arrive at self-love by becoming someone more deserving of it. It was the organizing principle of my inner life without my ever naming it as such. Every effort I made at self-improvement contained inside it an implicit indictment of who I currently was. Every practice I undertook to become better was premised on the belief that who I was now was not quite okay. And this premise, this constant background conviction that I was not yet the person I could love, defeated every effort I made. Because you cannot genuinely love what you have decided, even quietly, even unconsciously, is not yet good enough. And so I improved, and I practiced, and I worked on myself, and the self-love I was working toward kept receding just ahead of me. Until one day, sitting in a garden in my 61st year, I stopped. Not stopped trying, stopped believing the premise, stopped agreeing with the story that I needed to be different before I could be met with kindness. And in that stopping, in that simple refusal to continue the journey toward a destination I finally understood would never arrive, something I had never felt settled in for a moment, I was here, in this body, in this particular collection of strengths and wounds and imperfections and gifts. And it was enough to be met with something softer than the criticism I had been living inside. Not because I had finally earned softness, because softness is simply more honest than harshness, when what you are looking at is a human being trying her best. Let me tell you what I mean by awareness in the context of self-love, because this is the piece that changed everything for me. Awareness is not observation from the position of a critic. Most of us, when we turn attention toward ourselves, do so from the position of someone assessing a situation that needs improvement. We look at ourselves the way a building inspector looks at a structure that is being evaluated for compliance, with eyes trained to find what is wrong, with the implicit assumption that what we find will require correction. This is not awareness. This is judgment wearing the mask of self-knowledge. Real awareness is different in quality. It is closer to the attention of a mother watching her sleeping child, where the seeing is not looking for flaws, where the attention is not organized around identifying what needs to change, where the simple act of paying attention has a quality of care embedded in it, where to see is already to receive. This quality of attention is learnable. It is not natural for most of us, because we have been taught from childhood to see ourselves through a lens of comparison and evaluation and self-improvement. But it can be cultivated, and when it is, when you begin to turn toward yourself with a genuinely different quality of attention, something that has always been possible becomes actually present. The possibility of being in relationship with yourself rather than at war with yourself. The possibility of being a witness to your own experience rather than a judge of it. The possibility of what the Buddhist tradition calls clear seeing, which is not seeing what is good about yourself and ignoring what is difficult, but seeing everything that is there, difficulty included, with an eyes that carry within them something that wants to understand rather than to condemn. The first practice for learning to love yourself through awareness is what I call the practice of honest inventory. Not the kind of honest inventory that catalogues your failures and your inadequacies, an actual honest inventory, which includes everything, your genuine strengths, the things you do consistently and naturally well, the ways you have shown up for people, the moments where you were kinder than you needed to be, the courage you have shown in circumstances that tested you, the growth you have actually done, not the growth that hasn't happened yet. Most people are far more comprehensive in their accounting of their failures than in their accounting of their genuine qualities. Not because they are trying to be unfair to themselves, because the critical lens has been in place so long that it scans automatically for what is wrong and requires deliberate effort to notice what is right. The honest inventory practice is the deliberate effort. It is sitting down and genuinely asking, if I were compiling a complete and accurate account of this person, the way a fair and loving biographer would, what would it actually contain? Not only the places where she has fallen short, the whole thing, and then writing it. Not to make yourself feel good, to be accurate, and discovering that the accurate version of yourself is far more complicated and far more worthy of respect than the version the internal critic has been generating. The second practice is the practice of receiving kindness. This sounds passive. It is one of the most active and difficult practices I have ever encountered. Most people who struggle with self-love also struggle to receive kindness from others. When someone compliments them, they deflect. When someone expresses care, they minimize it. When someone sees something genuinely good in them, they argue with the seeing. This pattern is not coincidence. It is the same rejection operating outward that operates inward. And the practice of receiving kindness, of actually taking it in rather than deflecting it, is practice for the internal movement of receiving your own kindness. The next time someone says something genuinely kind to you, try something different. Instead of deflecting, pause, breathe. Let the kindness actually land. Feel what it feels like in your body to be seen generously by another person. Not to agree with their assessment necessarily, just to let it in. To let it be a piece of information rather than an error to be corrected. And notice what happens in you when you allow this. Because what happens is often a glimpse of something that your self-rejection has been blocking. A glimpse of the experience of being received rather than evaluated. And that glimpse, however brief, is a doorway. If what I'm sharing is touching something in you, if there is something opening that has been closed for a while, stay with me, because the deepest practice is still to come. And if this space has been useful to you, return to it, because learning to love yourself through awareness and acceptance is not a single event. It is a practice that circles back, that visits the same terrain again at different depths, that requires returning to these teachings not once but many times, as the layers reveal themselves. The third practice is acceptance, and I want to be very precise about what acceptance means, because it is almost universally misunderstood. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean that everything about you is equally wonderful. It does not mean you stop growing or stop caring about becoming more of what you want to be. Acceptance means acknowledging what is actually there without requiring it to be different before you will look at it with kindness. It means meeting the reality of yourself, including the parts that are genuinely difficult, without the additional suffering of refusing to acknowledge they exist, without the secondary pain of fighting against what is already there, without the enormous energy expenditure of maintaining the position that this part of you should not be this way, even when it clearly is. The specific quality of acceptance that opens the door to genuine self-love is the acceptance of your own history, the decisions you made that you regret, the ways you behaved that you are not proud of, the times you fell short of your own standards, the wounds you carry that are not entirely the result of what others did to you, but are partly the result of choices you made from those wounds. Accepting your history does not mean saying those things were good. It means acknowledging that they are part of what you are, that the person you are today has been shaped by all of it. that the shaping is real and irreversible, and that the person who was shaped by all of it, including by the mistakes and the difficulties and the moments of genuine failure, is the person who is here now, who is worth knowing, who deserves the same quality of compassionate attention that you would give to any human being who had lived through what you have lived through and made the kinds of choices that people who have lived through those things make. The fourth practice is the practice of continuity, which is the practice of not requiring the feeling of self-love to be constant before you trust that it is real. Self-love, when it is being genuinely cultivated rather than performed, does not feel continuous. It comes and goes. It is present in some moments and absent in others. It is strong some days and fragile others. And one of the most common ways people undermine their own practice of self-love is by using the absence of the feeling as evidence that the practice isn't working, that they haven't gotten there yet, that they are still not the person who can love herself. But the absence of the feeling is not evidence of failure. It is the ordinary rhythm of any practice, of any genuine relationship, including the relationship with yourself. The feeling comes and goes. What remains is the commitment to return to it when it goes, to pick the practice back up when it has been dropped, to return to awareness and acceptance when you have drifted from them into the old familiar criticism. And to do this without turning the dropping and the returning into further evidence against yourself, without saying, I can't even do this right, without the second arrow of self-judgment for having briefly lost the practice. Just returning, quietly, without drama. The way you would return to breathing after you had held your breath, not as a victory and not as a defeat, just as the next breath, as what comes after the gap. My name is Lawan. I'm 73 years old. I live in a small temple where the practice of self-love is not discussed as a topic, but lived as a way of meeting oneself in each ordinary moment, where the awareness that is cultivated is not an evaluative attention that looks for what needs improvement, but a receptive attention that is present to what is there, where acceptance is not a practice you do on difficult days, but the ground beneath every day, where the loving of oneself is not an arrival, but a returning again and again to the simple quality of honest, clear seeing that carries within it, quietly and without performance, the same care for this particular human being that any honest and compassionate witness would bring to any person who has lived what she has lived and is trying what she is trying. You are that person, the one who has lived what you have lived, who is trying what you are trying, who deserves exactly that quality of honest, compassionate, unsentimental seeing. Not because you have earned it, because you are here. And being here, being alive, being in the middle of the practice of being human, is sufficient reason for kindness. It always has been. It always will be. And learning that, truly learning it in the body rather than just in the mind, is what learning to love yourself through awareness and acceptance actually means. Tell me in the comments, what is the thing about yourself that you find most difficult to accept? Not to fix it, to name it. Because naming it with honesty and without shame is itself an act of awareness. And awareness, as you now know, is where everything begins.